Welcome to Starship TV. Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. Introduction. Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America, French de la démocratie en Amérique, is one of the most influential works in political theory and sociology ever written. Published in 2 volumes, Volume 1 in 1835 and Volume 2 in 1840, it analyzes the democratic political system of the United States in the early 19th century. Tocqueville, a French aristocrat, civil servant, and political thinker, used his travels in America, 1831 to 1832, as the foundation for a broader reflection on democracy, equality, liberty, and the future of Western civilization. Author background: Alexis de Tocqueville. Full name: Alexis Charles-Henri Clarel de Tocqueville. Born July 29, 1805, in Paris, France. Died April 16, 1859, in Cannes, France. Profession: political philosopher, historian, magistrate. Political stance: moderate liberal with aristocratic roots. Historical context: Tocqueville lived through the post-Napoleonic era, witnessing the instability of France as it shifted between monarchy, empire, and republic. Tocqueville was deeply concerned about the decline of aristocratic values and the rise of democratic equality. He feared the potential for tyranny in democratic systems, yet admired the freedom and civic vitality he observed in the United States. Purpose of Tocqueville's journey to America. In 1831, Tocqueville and his friend, Gustave de Beaumont, were officially sent by the French government to study the American prison system. However, the broader goal was to observe and understand American society and politics during a time when France was undergoing democratic changes of its own. Time in America: 9 months. Route: from New York to Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, the Ohio frontier, Michigan Territory, New Orleans, and back via Washington, D.C. Observations included local governments, churches, schools, newspapers, jails, Native American tribes, and plantations in the South. Structure of Democracy in America. Volume 1, 1835, focuses on American political institutions, local governance, federalism, and the concept of liberty. It emphasizes the role of civil society, religion, and civic associations in sustaining democracy. Volume 2, 1840, analyzes the effects of democracy on social conditions, intellect, culture, and daily life. It discusses the potential dangers of democratic despotism and conformity of opinion. Key themes in Democracy in America. Equality of conditions. Tocqueville identifies the equality of social conditions as the central fact of American life. Unlike Europe, where rigid class distinctions existed, America was marked by mobility, opportunity, and a leveling of social structures. The gradual development of the principle of equality is therefore a providential fact. Democracy and liberty. While Tocqueville celebrates the liberty enjoyed in America, he warns of the potential for soft despotism, where the state exerts subtle control over citizens under the guise of equality and welfare. The people will stand in need of being guided by the hand. This power is absolute, minute, regular, provident, and mild. Individualism versus civic participation. Democracy promotes individualism, which can lead to social isolation. However, Tocqueville praises American civic engagement, voluntary associations, and local self-government as antidotes. Americans of all ages, all stations in life, and all types of dispositions are forever forming associations. Role of religion. Tocqueville sees religion, especially Christianity, as a stabilizing force in American democracy. Though separated from government, it provides moral restraint and social cohesion. Liberty regards religion as its companion in all its battles and triumphs, as the cradle of its infancy and the divine source of its claims. Tyranny of the majority. Tocqueville was one of the first to warn of majoritarianism, where the majority can suppress minority rights and dissenting voices. The moral empire of the majority is founded on the principle that the interests of the many outweigh the interests of the few. American exceptionalism. Tocqueville hints at the uniqueness of the American experiment, a society where democracy, capitalism, religion, and a frontier mentality interact in dynamic ways. Important observations by Tocqueville. Local government, town meetings, and local autonomy are essential to political freedom. The press, the proliferation of newspapers promotes free exchange of ideas and checks centralized power. Law and lawyers serve as a moderating force, acting as a conservative ballast in a democratic system. Women. Tocqueville notes the strong role of women in American moral and family life, even within their limited legal status. Tocqueville on race and slavery. Tocqueville was critical of slavery, and deeply concerned about the racial divide in America. He believed that slavery would leave a lasting scar and predicted conflict between blacks and whites, even after abolition. He also commented on the treatment of Native Americans, condemning their forced removal and warning of the moral cost. Influence and legacy. Impact on political science. Laid the foundation for modern comparative politics and sociology. Introduced key concepts such as civil society, soft despotism, and tyranny of the majority. Influence in the U.S. Widely read and admired by American scholars, politicians, and thinkers. Frequently cited in debates about liberty, federalism, and democracy. Global influence. Tocqueville's analysis has been applied to emerging democracies worldwide. His concerns about mass conformity and bureaucratic overreach resonate in contemporary politics. Relevance today. Tocqueville's insights remain remarkably prescient. Concerns about polarization and populism. The decline of civic participation and trust. Expansion of administrative government power. Role of religion and civil values in sustaining democracy. His belief that democracy must be tempered by virtue, community, and a healthy mistrust of power continues to echo in modern discourse. Alexis de Tocqueville had a nuanced view of free enterprise and industry in America. He admired the energy and innovation that capitalism and industry generated in a democratic society. But he also warned of the dangers of materialism, inequality, and the reduction of human life to mere economic pursuit. Here's a breakdown of Tocqueville's thoughts on free enterprise, industry, and commerce in America. 1. Admiration for American industry and commercial spirit. Tocqueville was impressed by the entrepreneurial energy he observed in the United States. He noted that Americans, regardless of social background, were constantly engaged in commerce, invention, and economic advancement. The American lives in a land of wonders. He grows rich with incredible rapidity. He believed that the freedom of enterprise, combined with a democratic social structure, gave rise to widespread innovation, upward mobility, and a strong work ethic. Unlike in Europe, where wealth and class were more rigid, Americans could, through effort and risk, start businesses and succeed. In America, there is no class of persons who are not engaged in industry. 2. Equality fuels enterprise. Tocqueville argued that equality of conditions encouraged industry, because individuals could not rely on inherited privilege. Instead, everyone had to strive, innovate, and compete. This gave rise to a culture where economic productivity was widespread and almost expected. He admired how social mobility fueled ambition, and how Americans embraced work as part of their identity. In democracies, nothing is more great or more brilliant than commerce. 3. Caution about materialism and industrial aristocracy. While Tocqueville appreciated the benefits of free enterprise, he was concerned about its spiritual and social consequences. He warned that the pursuit of wealth could become all-consuming, leading people to focus on short-term gain rather than long-term virtue or civic duty. The love of wealth is the dominant passion of Americans. In Volume 2, he worried that industrialism could produce a new kind of industrial aristocracy, a class of employers and financiers growing wealthy while laborers were trapped in repetitive, soulless jobs. As the principle of equality gains ground, industrialists may become like feudal lords in a new form, commanding multitudes of wage earners with no stake in society. In other words, even in a democracy, economic inequality could resurface through the mechanisms of capitalism. 4. Impact of industry on social values and democracy. Tocqueville warned that overemphasis on economic life could lead to moral decline and civic apathy. He believed that Americans, if too absorbed in personal gain, might neglect public life, philosophy, the arts, and deep moral reflection. When the taste for physical gratifications has grown more rapidly than their education, the time will come when men are carried away and lose control of themselves. This created a risk of democratic despotism, where people become so focused on material comfort that they surrender their freedom to a centralized paternalistic state. 5. Innovation and change. Tocqueville admired how America's free enterprise system encouraged constant innovation. Americans were quick to adopt new technology, reorganize industries, and respond to market demands. He saw this as a hallmark of a thriving, adaptive society. Everything in America is in motion. However, he noted this came with a sense of instability and restlessness, as businesses and individuals were always looking for something new, never fully satisfied with what they had. Summary of Tocqueville's views on free enterprise and industry. Aspect. Tocqueville's perspective. Economic freedom. Positive. Admired widespread opportunity and mobility. Entrepreneurship. Celebrated. Saw it as energetic, widespread, and uniquely American. Materialism. Critical. Warned of moral and civic decay if wealth became the sole pursuit. Labor and industry. Concerned. Feared rise of a worker class disconnected from ownership and power. Innovation and change. Impressed. Noted rapid industrial progress and willingness to adapt. Wealth inequality. Cautious. Saw the emergence of a new kind of industrial elite. Spiritual and civic health. Alarmed. Economic focus could undermine higher values and democratic vitality. Tocqueville saw free enterprise and industry in America as central to the country's greatness, but also as a potential threat to its democratic soul. He respected the economic dynamism of the U.S., yet feared that unchecked capitalism could create new forms of inequality and apathy, undermining both liberty and community. His vision encourages modern readers to appreciate the power of free markets, while remaining vigilant about their social and moral consequences. Alexis de Tocqueville viewed westward expansion as a powerful and defining force in the development of the United States, though he expressed both admiration and concern about its implications, especially regarding Native Americans, democracy, and American character. Here's a detailed breakdown of Tocqueville's thoughts on westward expansion. Manifest destiny in action, before it was named. Though the term manifest destiny was coined after Tocqueville's time, he observed the spirit of expansion that drove Americans to settle the West. He saw this as a natural consequence of democracy and equality of conditions. It is nature itself that drives the Americans westward. It is fate, not policy. Tocqueville believed that Americans viewed expansion almost as a divine mission, driven by their belief in progress, land ownership, and freedom. He noted that American settlers were industrious, mobile, and self-reliant, often acting far ahead of federal government infrastructure or control. The role of the frontier in shaping American democracy. Tocqueville viewed the frontier as a crucible of democracy, a place where individuals had to rely on themselves, make decisions cooperatively, and take responsibility for their local affairs. This, he argued, helped reinforce the American traits of pragmatism, individualism, and civic participation. He was impressed by how quickly Americans moved westward, built homes, created towns, organized schools and churches, and formed self-governing communities. A man builds his hut, fells the trees around it, cultivates the soil, and he vanishes with his log house to go farther west, carrying with him his religion, his school, his principles. This mobility and expansion, in Tocqueville's eyes, fueled the growth of democratic culture more than aristocratic traditions ever could. Harsh judgment on the treatment of Native Americans. While Tocqueville admired the pioneering spirit, he was deeply disturbed by the treatment of Native Americans during westward expansion. He saw it as a tragic, morally troubling contradiction in a nation that prided itself on liberty and equality. The Indians in the forests are perishing without warfare, without massacre, a mysterious destruction, a slow and invisible decay. Tocqueville recognized that Native Americans were being pushed off their land not just by war, but by policy, encroachment, and indifference. He saw the expansionist momentum as unstoppable, but lamented its inhuman cost. Expansion is a sign of American vitality and restlessness. Tocqueville saw the westward drive as both a symbol of American vitality and a reflection of a kind of restless ambition. A people always moving, never fully satisfied, constantly seeking new opportunity. Americans are born with a lively faith in the perfectibility of man. They unceasingly change their plans, fearing to miss the shortest route to happiness. This restlessness, while dynamic, also had its dangers. Tocqueville feared it could lead to materialism, a neglect of deeper civic and spiritual life, and eventually, a kind of spiritual fatigue or democratic despotism. Summary of Tocqueville's view on westward expansion. Aspect. Tocqueville's view. Democracy. Expansion encouraged local self-rule and civic life. Individualism. The frontier rewarded independence and self-reliance. Economic opportunity. Seen as a key driver of American optimism and action. Native Americans criticized the cruelty and injustice of displacement. Government role. Expansion occurred with minimal federal oversight. National identity. Helped shape a distinctly American character. Moral concern. Troubled by expansion's human cost and aggressive nature. Final reflection. Tocqueville admired westward expansion as a symbol of American energy and democratic growth, but he was not blind to its moral costs and contradictions. He portrayed the movement as both the promise of a new civilization and the fading of ancient peoples, warning that even in a democracy, progress can come with injustice. You're watching Starship TV. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Conclusion. Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America stands as a profound and far-reaching analysis of democracy's strengths and potential dangers. Blending travelogue, sociology, philosophy, and political analysis, Tocqueville offers a lens through which we can examine not only 19th century America, but also the enduring challenges and promises of democratic life. It remains essential reading for anyone interested in liberty,